Hello, you little marketing bees. You're tuned into episode 90 of the Marketing Buzzword Podcast.
This is the Marketing Buzzword Podcast, the podcast where we dissect the world's most common marketing buzzwords. Hold on tight. We are about to fly around the beehive to see the latest buzzwords that stuck to the marketing bees.
Hello again and welcome back to the Marketing Buzzword Podcast. This is a podcast which helps you to understand what all these business and marketing buzzwords actually mean and how they can be helpful or not going forward. I'm your host Ben Roberts, and in this show I'm the marketing bee in charge of making sure I can get on the right guests and ask the right questions to make sure these words and phrases actually make sense. And in today's show we're going to make sense of the buzzword inbound PR. And to let you know as well, there is going to be an evolution of this marketing buzzword project. So if you haven't heard from me for a few weeks, don't panic. Things are changing, but there's still going to be tons and tons of info to come from this podcast. I need to let you know as well that this podcast is powered by Talkative. Talkative is a company that brings together live web chat, voice calling, video calling, and co-browsing together in one package embedded into your website. It allows you and your business to truly engage with your customers, offer quick and effective resolutions to questions, and improve the customer experience. Everything from social messaging to directly website messaging, Talkative can handle it and save all that data straight into your CRM. Right, that's more enough about me. It's time to introduce this week's guest. And this week's guest is Ileana Stareva, and she is the Global Partner Program Manager at HubSpot, where she plans and executes cross-functional change across global teams and drives the execution of the program strategy. With a background in PR and agency business consulting, as well as a fluent speaker and writer in Bulgarian, English, and German, she is the author of Inbound PR, Social Media, and the Rebirth Inbound PR, Social Media and the Rebirth of PR and Social Media. The key for sustainability in communications. Loads of links for all Ileana stuff can be found in the show notes at marketingbuzzword.com. Right. That's more enough from me. Let's get on with the show. Hi, Ileana, and welcome to the podcast.
Hi, Ben. Thanks so much for having me today.
Oh, God, the pleasure is absolutely mine. I'm so glad we could make this happen. We've been trying for weeks, and we finally made it.
Busy schedules, right?
Oh, I know, right? But no, I'm so glad to get you on because ever since I've heard this term, inbound PR, and I read the book that you've written on it, I thought this is a perfect term that I want to talk about on the podcast. Because in the book that I've written as well, I've looked at people who've sort of coined their own terms and making a stand for something they believe in and a thread that they can sort of build their personal business around and actually really relate to the businesses they work for. And this seems perfect. So, Ileana, what is inbound PR and sort of how did you come up with the concept of inbound PR?
Sure. So inbound PR was born about 3-4 years ago, and it really is something that I coined and came up with thanks to my experience working in traditional PR and a lot of influencer relationships as well, blogger relations, etc. And then my almost now 5 years working at HubSpot, everything, and HubSpot is an American company. We produce marketing, self-service software, everything. That's everything around the inbound methodology, right? So inbound PR very much is a mix between what PR does really well, which is content and storytelling, and tries to alleviate PR's biggest challenge, which is measurement, that inbound marketing does really, really well from the start. So when I joined HubSpot 4.5 years ago, I noticed this opportunity for PR to evolve and really to learn a ton of stuff from inbound marketing to be able to basically provide better results to clients, or if you're an internal person, if you work in internal PR for your company, obviously. So the whole idea then, as I said, is that inbound PR allows you to do PR the modern way, which leverages a lot of content that's used and created for various and different channels that we have now in the digital reality, and uses measurement tactics and proper goals with regards to ROI, etc., from the very beginning. So you're thinking with outcomes in mind, as in what's in it, like what is PR going to bring to our business? How does that relate to sales versus just outputs, which are around, well, we want to get 5 coverage pieces in a publication. That really doesn't say anything about the efforts and the results that you're achieving from them. So that's pretty much the notion of inbound PR.
Yeah, I really like that, because this is one of the big criticisms, isn't it, of PR, is that it's immeasurable. And you hear of other PR people, PR agencies, and it's like, it's about sort of potential impressions. It's about the amount of people that you're going to go to a magazine and say, our magazine gets circulated to X number of people. Okay, that's brilliant, but how does that actually really tangibly impact us as a business? And I think it's really, and this is what sort of fascinated me about what you're trying to do, because actually is the focus on the measurement. Because I think PR seems to be getting a lot better. And a couple of weeks ago, we talked about Marcoms, and we're looking at actually measuring stuff is becoming even more important than PR, even though it's always been sort of something that people have thought about. They were always struggling with a way in which to measure it and justify the actions. That we all knew PR was a good thing, but people were struggling to almost justify it in terms of analytics and measurement.
People have been scared of it, right? Because it's like everybody talks about PR as a reputation management discipline, which in fairness it is, because to a point you are trying to generate thought leadership with the content that you're creating and sharing out, whether you're doing that directly going to your public or using an intermediary in the sense of the media or influencers or whatever to do that for you, right? But you're totally right. PR needs to stop using vanity metrics, because that's not what CEOs care about, right? Like, they care about the money. They want to have a number tied to it. They really want to talk return on investment. And we live in a world where there's so many tools and so much technology out there that makes data and analytics and measurement a lot easier. Previously, you couldn't probably tell a lot of these things in terms of the influence or the reputation you've managed to improve, etc. But now you can easily do it. However, I think the biggest piece is a different mindset, right? Like the main piece of advice with regards to the book is that PR people need to open up and adopt a different way of thinking and doing the work that they're doing. Traditionally, PR people have very much been implementers. Not all of them. There are some really good PR agencies and PR professionals out there, but few are really considered strategic advisors. And inbound PR is very strategic because it starts with the bigger goals in mind that we just discussed around the tangible results. And only then does it think about the PR tactics that we can use to achieve those results. So it's almost backwards to how PR people have been used to doing the work. Typically, they've come up with a news idea, right? And then start writing about it and start pitching it. But the conversation around, like, where does that fit into the bigger picture, right? Like, what's that going to bring our business? What's the return on investment? Why are we even doing it? I don't think a lot of PR people ask why, and think about the broader results, the larger things that they should be achieving.
I guess, yeah, it's almost like actually bring it in as part of the campaign. Then when I was reading the book and looking through sort of how it all worked, it seemed like it was a great way of being able to break down some of these barriers that we have between marketing people, PR people, and comms people, where PR think almost they want to lead it, but marketers don't feel they have the strategic vision, but PR are like, well, we lead in the story, everything else sort of falls off the story. So it hopefully helps bring different teams in together, and I really like that sort of the idea that it's being a more strategic approach, because this is, again, I guess, a criticism that's often laid into PR, is that it's just not strategic. It's stories. It's creating a narrative. But okay, yes, you've got a story into a newspaper, or you've got it into a new media outlet. But what does that actually mean? How does that fit into the wider context? How does that fit into a campaign that we're doing? How does that fit into whatever it is that we're trying to sell as a business, as opposed to it being a standalone entity? So it starts thinking about PR as an area not into marketing, but as its own thing in its own right still, but just equally more integrated instead of being on its own. Would you say that was a fair assessment, Ileana?
Yeah, I absolutely agree. And I've always said it really depends on who you're trying to reach, because PR people really are tremendous storytellers and content creators. They just need to become a little bit more strategic. So if you have a well-versed and very strategic, really experienced PR agency, that PR agency could probably take on a lot of the work that the marketing agency would be doing. And I have a whole chapter in the book that focuses on the whole term of the persona, right? Like really the stakeholder that you're trying to achieve. I think PR is the most unique industry because it is the only industry that could target different stakeholders if they know how to do it, right? Traditionally, marketing focuses on the buyer. However, PR could also focus on the buyer because people are content creators. If they are given the opportunity to create the content for the website, then they'd be also able to generate leads. Typically, it's what marketing does, is the lead creation. PR as well deals traditionally too with the media, right? Like this is your media persona, your journalists, your influencers, and so on. That's usually the realm that marketing doesn't really touch. And it's normally reserved for PR. There's a lot better way of doing all of that. And it goes back to the definition of that whole media persona, who they are, how do they like to work with you, what's the type of stories they need for their publication, what's their readership like, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah, this is something I find fascinating, Liana. I'm absolutely loving this at the moment.
Thank you. And if you think about PR as well, like PR too could, and a lot of PR people move into internal communication to tackle employee communication. So the employee could be your persona in the sense. So you need a definition of that. You want to know how to communicate to them, what to communicate to them, how to need their help. Like we do a lot of that here at HubSpot. With regards to internal communication, and we leverage our own teams to share news and spread the word about our company outside. So, and PR can tackle shareholders. So a really, really big realm of stakeholders, as I said, or personas, as I call them in the book. But again, PR people do need the skills and the change of mindset, and it is a process.
Yeah, this is the bit I find really fascinating, is that more and more it was quite clear that PR worked with media and interviews and sort of putting yourself out there, whereas marketing was generated more with lead gen. And we're seeing more and more this crossover between them, where marketers are more being tasked with actually dealing with the media through guest posting, through interviews, through Facebook Lives, LinkedIn Lives, podcasting. Marketers are now trying to drive and be that and create the media themselves, and they're trying to be, with the whole rise of content marketing, it's how do we create more content. So marketers are now leading and moving towards this media approach, and actually then we're seeing PR people are now being tasked with actually not just purely getting people in the media, but actually generating leads. And this is what I found I loved about this term that you came up with. It really starts to encapsulate from your point of view and your perspectives and your experiences how these two elements are changing, and actually how, especially from a PR side, how they need to sort of maybe adapt to this new world of metrics and data, which actually marketers seem to embrace a bit quicker than PR people seem to.
That's absolutely right. And the way I realized that was really through working with about 200 agencies from across EMEA. And those agencies would come from traditional marketing or web development design or PR backgrounds. And so I was a consultant to those agencies. I helped them grow their businesses with the inbound philosophy and our HubSpot softwares over here. And it was really fascinating for me to work with their CEOs to see how they plan to grow in the digital reality, and what they were thinking about their strategies for the future, etc. So it was super interesting for me to be able to grasp where they were really good at and what were the areas that they're faltering. And that's how Inbound PR was born, right? Like the book itself was written for agencies, even though the primary part of the book focuses on the PR practice and combining it with inbound. So that's kind of like how I started doing the work on the methodology of inbound PR, so to say, and then obviously the book came out later. But you're spot on with that comment, spot on.
Yeah, no, it's really interesting, and I really like this. So, from the book, then, can you explain? Because you explain this in the book, and obviously, from your bio that we read at the start, and we want to encourage people to buy a copy of your book. So I find it personally really interesting. So, can you talk through the methodology that of creating this inbound PR sort of methodology? What are those steps? Can you talk through those steps that you go through in the book about how you create this methodology?
Sure. And the methodology evolved because the book was published last year, so there've been a couple of changes, but the methodology primarily consists of 3 parts that you need to wrap your head around first. And those go into your entire business strategy, not just your PR strategy. And so it consists of attracting, engaging, and delighting your personas. This is the key that you need to understand first before we go into thinking around, anything that's more related to goals or tactics you're going to try out within your campaigns, whether they're PR or marketing related. So we are humans, and regardless what role we take, whether we are in there to buy something, whether we are a media professional, whether we are, we work for a company, we all engage with businesses in one shape or form, and we always go through a decision-making journey that starts from being attracted to a company through its content, continuing to engage with that company through the content, through bots, through talking to salespeople, whether that's, depending on that's B2B, B2C, etc. And then if we do end up working with the company, for example, if we are a media person on some coverage or some story, or if we do end up buying from the company, if we are the buyer, or if we as an employee choose to work with that company, then the company's role is to continue to delight us and build a relationship with us and continue to provide a really great experience to us so that we then refer that company and positively talk about that company. And that becomes a whole flywheel, right? So we as delighted, then we bring in other people to the company. So these people get attracted to the company and the whole flywheel keeps on spinning. Now, that's just to understand how things have shifted over the years. Previously, it really was about selling. Then it was about lead generation. Now it really is about the people who have a relationship with your business to bring new business to you. Now, as for setting an inbound PR strategy, it all starts with your goals, right? We discussed that in the beginning. You need to know why you're doing PR and what you expect to get out of it. Once you have a clear understanding of that, then you need to make a decision, or based on your goals, you will know these are the personas that we want to tackle. We just want to work with the media, for example, because this is why coverage is important for us. This is what we're hoping to achieve with it. This is how much we want to get out of it. Once you have that, you need to start defining the media persona. People often rely on assumptions, whereas it's hugely important to go out and actually get to know these media personas. It's better to work with 5 journalists or influencers that have a vetted interest in your company and that their readers or listeners or whatever, if it's YouTube, would be interested in hearing about your products and services, instead of reaching out to 500 of them with a blank press release spammed in an email inbox that they're just going to ignore. So you need to get to know them really well and do that whole research. You need to research the decision-making process that they go through. Every writer, journalist, influencer, they go through a process where they define that they want to write a story or create a story. They research that story, oftentimes on Google and social media. They look into brands and companies, and then they actively decide who they want to work with, and oftentimes reach out to you rather than you pitching them. That's the whole idea with inbound. You're pulling people in versus pushing messages out there. So once you define your personas and you know their decision-making journey, you can start creating content that answers the questions that they ask throughout their decision-making journey, and placing that content in the right channels, on the right places on your website, and figuring out how you can engage with these people. They may be fine with email. Others might prefer Twitter. Like if you pitch me for a guest post on my blog, it's probably best to send me a quick Twitter message rather than email me, because I'll probably ignore an email because I get a ton, but I'll pay attention to you on Twitter and tell you how to reach out to me.
I know that feeling.
Yeah, so it's like important, and everybody's different. That's why you need to personalize that experience. Just as you're doing it for buyers, I think that's a big thing now, because customer experience, CX, EX, all that kind of good stuff. It's the same with media people. They're just humans too. Like they want to engage with a real person, and they want to know that person has actually made an effort to get to know them and reach out in the proper channels with the proper topics, with the proper pitches, etc. Same process. So once you create that all good content, you start spreading it out, you start promoting it. As I said, the whole idea is that these people come to you. They actively find you through your content during their searches. So you may even design a newsroom for them, because that is the media persona. Just as you're doing it for your buyers on your website, where you have a download section with all the ebooks and good stuff you've written for the buyers, Likewise, you create a newsroom that's specifically designed for that persona. So they know they go there and they can find all the information that they need about your company, from press releases to coverage to important visuals to executive interviews, product sheets, etc. Like all that important information. You can use some automation as well. Once you have your list and you know that these media people have engaged with you, they've come on your website, on your newsroom, they've downloaded something, they're interested. Ideally, you can use, marketing automation, workflows, bots, etc. to keep on engaging with them. Eventually, you'll start working with them. Hopefully, you continue building that relationship, you engage with them, etc. And finally, you measure the results, right? Like we said, we have all those tools out there that enable you not just to measure the little tactics and how many shares you've had, etc. These are just vanity metrics that really don't matter. But to go back into the bigger picture around sales, for example, I've seen a lot of companies, and we do that too. We use a PR collateral. Our sales teams use the PR collateral, and that's super helpful. And can be, and it's an easy way to tie it back to ROI, because if that's the type of collateral that prospects end up reading and consuming, and thanks to it make a decision to buy, then that's a clear sign of money generated through PR activity. So I run through these very quickly. As you can see, I'm really passionate about that topic, but it goes back to, as I said, defining your goals, making sure that you create profiles for your personas, you defining their decision-making journey, creating a content plan to cover the questions they're asking throughout that decision-making journey, promoting the content, including doing better media relations, nurturing those media leads or buyers leads through automation, and then finally measuring those results to close the loop, learn what you've done well, what worked, what didn't, perhaps even kill things that didn't work well. I think we spend far too much time on new things, and we forget that, if things are not working, we can just kill them and not waste our time anymore on them. And it's a constant cycle, basically.
Yeah, no, I love that bit at the end. I think it was called cost. I can't remember the term now. It was on the tip of my tongue. I literally had it on the end of my tongue. But basically, just because you're spending a lot of money potentially doing something, if it's not working, stop it. It'll cost you less in the long run than it does in the short term to keep it. And that's going to really annoy me now. I'm going to wake up at like 4 a.m. or something with that phrase going to be on the tip of my tongue. Anyway. Oh, back to it, Ben.
We'll write it in the description after that.
I know, exactly, right? And one thing that I thought was quite interesting, and I think this is a question that I see a lot of people asking around PR and measurement and metrics. And this is where PR and marketing potentially are at loggerheads. And this is a thing of, say, SEO and link building. And obviously link building is sort of an arguably good or bad thing, and how much benefit it has, people will argue till the dawning of a new day. But how does the thing, so if you say as a marketing team, you go, look, driving inbound links with a high domain authority is important to us as a business. That's to be one of the metrics. A lot of media and PR professionals will say, oh, we'll give you a no follow backlink, or they won't give you any backlinks, because as journalists and as media, it's not necessarily in their interest to. So how do marketers potentially look at metrics like that, which are potentially stuff that the media don't always like to give away, or don't always want to give what the marketers looking for? Because this is where marketers are judged by more things, like you said, about lead generation and potentially like domain authority, the website, backlinks, whereas media and PR aren't necessarily judged by that. So how do metrics like that fit in between marketing and PR?
Yeah, and it's a tough question, because I feel like every business has a different stand on it, but I'd push back on it and I'd really be digging into, well, what does that mean? So if we have those ton of links, what does that mean? We rank higher on Google. What does that mean? Is that your primary driver of sales? Is it really through Google where you get your prospects, or is it something else? So that's where I will dig into and identify, well, the reason why this is so important to us is because of so and so and so and so. And if that really is the case, then you're going to have to figure out whether it's traditional media that's going to give you the links. And if they're not going to do it, is it better for you then to work with influencers who'd probably be more willing to do it, because they might actually have the majority of your readership or audiences you're interested in. I, as an influencer forever, for example, when I work with somebody, I always give the backlinks. That's not a problem for me. So it really goes back to the larger question on what is the role of all of that in our organization? What does it mean for to the bigger picture.
Yeah, I think that's a really important point, isn't it? Again, and this is all comes back to what you said earlier on, isn't it? It's that strategic approach to being part of the campaign and what the outcomes are in mind. Why are we doing this? We're not just creating necessarily stories for the sake of it. It's actually trying to think about PR in a more lead generation sense, and marketing in a media sense. How do we blend all this together? And this is where you've almost converted me into an advocate of inbound PR, because I saw the benefits, but it was like, how do they all work together? And this is something I think that hopefully people who are listening to this now will start getting an idea for inbound PR and this term you've coined, which I absolutely love, and how it matters and why it's important.
It's super important. Alignment is key in the business world we live in today, and I see that with a lot of companies, large and small. Especially bigger, more traditional organizations who have different teams, right? Like we have different teams as well, but we strive for a lot of alignment between them. And obviously we have a team that focuses on lead generation, a team that focuses on customer marketing, another one that focuses on PR, another one that focuses on internal communication. But all of these departments talk together, and they are targeted on the larger goals. As I mentioned earlier, we have these three stages of the methodology: attract, engage, and delight. And each of these themes is aligned around one of those bigger buckets that they play an active role into. So as I mentioned, it does go back into the bigger picture, and then teams just need to start talking to each other and get more aligned instead of, at the end of the day, they work for the same company. At the end of the day, they're trying to achieve the same thing, even though they may be they may have different team targets, etc. But it is a team effort. Running a company, working in a business together is a team effort. It all goes back to communication and alignment and collaboration.
Definitely. And then, so one last question then for you then, Ileana, is if people then decide that inbound PR is something that they want to potentially introduce into their company, or they need to either convince someone within the organization, or they need to convince the organization itself that inbound PR is a good thing, what are some of the common blockers that you often find that people associate with inbound PR, and how can they circumnavigate some of those potential blockers to make sure that inbound PR is something that they can implement within their business themselves?
Definitely. I get that a lot with the companies that I work with. And I think the primary reason for that is because inbound PR is still a very new thing. If, looking at your book, for example, it's yet another marketing buzzword that in the eyes of an executive probably doesn't mean anything. So I always advise people who seek to do inbound PR, because at the end of the day, when you're trying to convince your CEO or whoever else at the company to do that, you're asking for resources. So you're asking for money or budget in one shape or form, whether that's just your time or for actual dollar or pounds, in this case for the UK, or even euro if you're here. So really, I always advise to make sure that they build their business case and start again with the numbers in mind and be very clear as to what they're going to achieve and how they're going to get there, right? Like what's the return on investment on all of that. And I also do advise not to use the word inbound PR, because executives are not, used to it. They should stick to words that executives are already aware of, not adding anything new to the lexicon just because people are not going to understand it. Like keep it really, really simple, to the point, make your case, and then you should be able to get your budget out there to actually try that. The other obstacle is really executing on it well. So once you get budget, make sure that you do have the right people, or even if it's just one person, make sure that you're well educated on everything that's inbound PR. So that you do it right. So these are the two things. One is budget, and the other one is actually the capabilities to do it.
Yeah, I think that's it, isn't it? Like knowledge and budget. It's like knowledge is power in itself, but you also need the resources to be able to back it up. And I think that's a really nice way of being able to navigate around those blockers, because these are blockers. Blockers are what come up all the time. People say, I can't do this because someone doesn't understand it. They don't buy into it. They don't. I've got this great idea and someone can't. So trying to understand how you can actually circumnavigate those blockers, I think is a really important point. So I think that pretty much wraps up everything I really want to talk about. And then the last thing for me to say is really make sure that people take a look at your book, Inbound PR. So I've read it myself and I really enjoy it. Even if you're not an agency owner, you get so much from it. So I definitely would recommend that. Inbound PR is a term that most of you probably haven't yet heard of, but I think it's something that's actually going to be really powerful, especially as we talked about earlier in the episode about the measurement side of PR and how that is so much more important. It's no longer just about sort of advertising equivalent value. It's about actually how can we tangibly measure the results of the PR. So thank you so much for your time today, Ileana.
I appreciate it, Ben. Thank you so much for recommending and for obviously reading the book as well. And I really appreciate that time today. I had a great time. And I'd like to wish all the listeners good luck if they do try inbound PR and to keep me posted.
Absolutely. But one last thing before I let you go, Ileana. You thought you might have got away with this, but I've got to ask you the one question I ask everyone at the end of this each episode is, what are the marketing buzzwords are you loving or hating right now, Ileana? What is really grinding your gears? I mean, you go, I wish people would stop using this term, or something. You go, yes, I love this term. This is something that I think people can get on board with or might be powerful in the future.
All right. So I'm probably saying that getting me on the spot here, but probably the top one for me would be anything around customer journey. And I know we hear that a lot, but the whole idea, and we discussed that earlier with inbound PR, is not just around measurement, but really doing things that are very customer or generally persona specific, right? Like media persona specific, for example. And so anything you do as a company, if you design it with your persona in mind, with your stakeholder in mind, rather than your business, your products, your services, really be customer centric and customer first, you're not going to lose. So definitely customer journey, I think, is key, because at the end of the day, you should be designing experiences across the entire life cycle of all the stakeholders you're dealing with on an ongoing basis.
Ooh,
as for the one that I hate or don't like, I'd probably say growth hacking. I've never understood growth hacking. You should not be hacking into any of your marketing activities. Like, hacking to me sounds like a Band-Aid sort of, and I think that's just wrong. I think companies should be doing things very strategically. Some things will take longer, but at least the results will also be long-term and not, just a general spike that at the end of the day is not really going to help you if you think about the future of your company. So I never really understood growth hacking. Does that fit it?
Yeah, no, absolutely. That's a term that's been brought up a fair bit on in this section of the podcast, because hacking itself by its very nature, I mean, yes, you can argue that there's black hat and white hat hacking, but hacking by its very design means something that's necessarily not quite the good thing to do. I think, it has so many negative connotations. So maybe the principles of it aren't necessarily too bad if you dig into it, but actually the way it all sort of presents itself is far from ideal. So I can't agree more on both of those, Ileana.
Good. I'm glad to hear that. So
now I can officially let you go. So thank you so much for your time again, Ileana. It's been an absolute blast.
I really appreciate it. Thank you so much, Ben. Take care.
Before Ileana, I'd not heard this term inbound PR. But for me, this is exactly what I advocate in the book, Marketing Buzzword, Marketing Authority. And it's the idea of having this thing, this word, this phrase, buzzword if you like, that you can build an authority and a knowledge and a presence around. It's your thing. This is what you do. This is who you are. This is someone. Ileana's living this, and with the backing of a company like HubSpot as well, it all makes so much sense, because what she's talking about in inbound PR is tied so intrinsically to HubSpot, and that is incredible in itself, because she's found something that she can put her own unique stamp on, and something that makes sense. So when she explains it, it makes a huge amount of sense. It's not just a pie in the sky word that adds no value. It just adds to the sort of the cloud of bullshitty jargon. It actually adds a bit of clarity, and you can listen to it and you can understand how you can potentially use inbound PR and why it should be an actual thing as well. It's not just a word that someone's just made up. It is an actual thing. So, love this conversation with Ileana. Please check out her book, Inbound PR. Again, you'll know me if you listen to this podcast regularly. I don't often shout out books and stuff that for the sake of it. I really, really do recommend this book. It's a really fascinating insight. Whether you've got an agency or not, but you're interested in sort of finding out a bit more about PR, check it out. Inbound PR by Ileana Stareva. Thank you so much. And if you are enjoying the show, please do leave a review on iTunes. So, one final thing. Notice we are now on episode 90. This podcast, in its current guise, will stop at 100. Just to give you a thing, this podcast will stop at 100. However, there are 10 more episodes which are going to blow your mind. I've got some amazing guests lined up for these last few episodes. And this isn't a goodbye from me. This is actually just an evolution of what the Marketing Buzzword project is and what I wrote about in the book. So finding something to stand for. That is your tease. And each week at the end of these podcasts, I'm going to leave you with another tease about what's coming next from the Marketing Buzzword project. Goodbye.
This podcast is part of the You Are the Media Network.